Imagine standing in the burning heat of the Egyptian desert, miles away from the tourist crowds that flock to the Great Pyramids. No towering monuments here, no crowds, just dust, wind, and silence. But beneath your feet, hidden for thousands of years, may lie something far more mysterious than any pyramid. A sprawling underground labyrinth, so vast, so complex, that ancient writers claimed it could rival all the wonders of the ancient world combined. They called it the Lost Labyrinth of Egypt. You've probably never heard of it. Most people haven't. But it wasn't always this way. In fact, for over 2,000 years, some of the greatest minds in history described it in detail. Historians, philosophers, explorers, Herodotus, Strabo, Pliny the Elder, all wrote about it as if it were real, as if they had seen it with their own eyes. They described a structure with thousands of rooms, secret chambers and endless hallways, some above ground, some below. A place built not just to impress, but to guard secrets. Secrets of the gods, secrets of the dead, maybe even secrets not meant to be found. But today, it's gone, vanished from maps, ignored in textbooks, forgotten by history. How does something like that disappear? Why would one of the greatest structures of the ancient world be completely erased from collective memory? Unless someone wanted it that way. In this series, we're diving headfirst into one of Egypt's most unsettling mysteries. No conspiracy theories, no wild sci-fi claims, just ancient records, archaeological findings, and a haunting puzzle that refuses to go away. A puzzle that might just rewrite everything we know about ancient Egypt. This is the story of the Lost Labyrinth. And it begins long before the pyramids. The first mention of the labyrinth comes from Herodotus, the Greek historian who visited Egypt in the 5th century BC. When he returned he couldn't stop talking about what he saw. He claimed that even the pyramids, which he admired greatly, were nothing compared to the labyrinth he'd visited at a place called Hawara, near the edge of the Fayum oasis. According to him, it had 12 enormous courtyards and thousands of chambers, some above ground, others carved deep into the earth. The walls were covered in intricate carvings and hieroglyphs. Columns towered over the halls. The entire structure was built with such precision and scale that Herodotus wrote, "I found it greater than words can tell." Let that sink in. Herodotus saw the pyramids with his own eyes. He walked among their stones, marveled at their size. And yet, he said the labyrinth surpassed them. So why haven't you seen it? Why doesn't it show up in documentaries or history books? It's not because we didn't look. It's because we stopped. In the centuries after Herodotus, other writers backed up his claims. Strabo, a Roman geographer and philosopher, described the labyrinth in the 1st century BC. He said it stood beside a pyramid and that it served as a kind of temple complex, one dedicated to the ancient kings of Egypt. Strabo claimed the roof was made from a single slab of stone, so large it seemed impossible. Pliny the Elder described underground crypts and burial chambers filled with crocodiles, sacred creatures in Egyptian religion. These weren't vague legends passed down by word of mouth. These were first-hand accounts from respected scholars and travelers. So what happened to it? Where did it go? The modern world first caught wind of the labyrinth again in the late 1800s, when famed Egyptologist Flinders Petrie excavated the site of Hawara. He found the ruins of a pyramid there, believed to be that of Pharaoh Amenemhat III, a ruler from the 12th dynasty of Egypt's Middle Kingdom. According to ancient sources, the labyrinth is built as part of Amenemhat's mortuary complex. Petrie uncovered thousands of fragments, carved stones, broken columns, floors, but not the labyrinth itself, at least, not visibly. What he did find, however, were clues. Strange ones. Foundations so large they didn't match the scale of the visible ruins. Remains of walls and corridors that hinted at something far bigger buried underneath. Petrie wasn't the only one who thought so. A few decades later, in 1920, an archaeologist named Edouard Naville also visited Hawara. He was convinced the true labyrinth still lay underground, untouched, but funding ran out. World wars erupted, and the desert swallowed the story once again. But in 2008, something extraordinary happened. A Belgian-Egyptian team known as the Mataha expedition used ground-penetrating radar to scan the area beneath Hawara. What they found? A massive geometric structure buried beneath the sand. Hundreds of feet long, regular patterns, angles too precise to be natural. A potential match for what Herodotus described over 2,000 years ago. But before the news could spread, the Egyptian authorities stopped further investigations. The full report was never published in scientific journals. The site was sealed. The press went silent. Why? Why block further study? Why bury something that could be one of the most important discoveries in Egyptian archaeology? Was it to protect the site? Or to protect something else? We don't know. But here's what we do know. The ancient writers weren't vague. They were specific. They named the place. They measured the structure. They drew maps. And now, modern scans confirm something enormous is still there. So, what are we looking at? Is it a mortuary temple? A royal tomb? A library? A spiritual maze? Or something even more profound? Because some historians believe the labyrinth wasn't just a monument, it was a database, a record, a coded repository of the world's ancient knowledge hidden in stone. Others think it was a symbolic journey of the soul meant to guide the dead through the afterlife. And still others wonder if it might be even older than Amenemhat III himself. Perhaps a legacy from a time before pharaohs, before dynasties, before history was even written. The mystery is only just beginning. Centuries before the age of Google Maps, a man from Greece journeyed to Egypt in search of truth. His name was Herodotus. Often called the father of history, Herodotus was no ordinary traveler. He had heard whispers of a massive underground structure near a place called Crocodilopolis. Yes, that's what the Greeks called it, a city sacred to the crocodile god Sobek. He didn't come to sightsee. He came to witness what he was told was the most incredible monument on earth. Not the pyramids, not the temples, but something even more astonishing, buried below them. He was taken to the site by Egyptian priests, and when he emerged, he was speechless. What he saw, he claimed, surpassed even the pyramids in grandeur, a labyrinth, vast beyond imagination. It had 3,000 rooms according to him, 1,500 above ground and 1,500 below. The upper chambers were filled with carvings and inscriptions, pillars and reliefs. But the lower chambers, those, he was told, no living man could enter. Why? Because that's where the tombs were, of ancient kings and sacred crocodiles. Herodotus never set foot inside the underground halls. The priests forbade it. But the very existence of this subterranean world haunted him. He described it in his writings as one of the greatest marvels he'd ever encountered. And this is a man who walked through Babylon, but he wasn't the only one. 2 centuries later, the Roman scholar Strabo also visited the site. He confirmed the existence of the structure, even describing how its roof was made of a single piece of stone, and how each room led into another in such a way that visitors would get lost unless guided. Other ancient writers, Pliny the Elder, Diodorus Siculus, Pomponius Mela, all echoed similar accounts. Different men, different times, but they told the same story. Now ask yourself, could all of them be wrong? Could they have all imagined the same exact monument down to its rooms, columns, and hidden tombs? Or was there really a lost labyrinth beneath the sands of Egypt? If these records are to be believed, then the question becomes more chilling. Where did it go? Think about it. The Great Pyramid still stands. The Valley of the Kings still echoes with the breath of pharaohs. Even ruins from earlier civilizations, like Sumer and Mohenjo-Daro, remain. But the Egyptian labyrinth, it vanished, as if the earth itself swallowed it whole. The only thing more puzzling than what it was is why it disappeared. And that's not all. Some theorists suggest that the labyrinth didn't just vanish due to time or erosion, but was intentionally hidden. Why? Because what it contained may have rewritten history. Let's take a moment here. Imagine a structure designed not for the living, but to guard the dead and their secrets. A stone memory palace filled with sacred knowledge, ritual chambers, and perhaps technologies we no longer understand. What if these underground rooms weren't just tombs, but archives? What if the lower chambers contained ancient blueprints, maps of the stars, even lost texts from forgotten civilizations, predating the pharaohs themselves? We already know the Egyptians were master builders, astronomers and mathematicians, but where did their knowledge come from? Could the labyrinth have been the library before the Library of Alexandria? A vault of forbidden knowledge, sealed away, not just by stone, but by deliberate silence? Modern archaeology hasn't given us many answers. Most mainstream scholars believe Herodotus was exaggerating, that he must have misunderstood what he saw, or that erosion destroyed it long ago. But here's where it gets interesting. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, several expeditions tried to locate the labyrinth based on Herodotus's descriptions. Some dismissed the effort. Others found things they didn't expect. In 1888, a German archaeologist named Carl Richard Lepsius mapped a vast complex near the site Herodotus described. He uncovered massive stone foundations, pillars, walls, chambers, partially buried under layers of silt. He believed he had found the ruins of the labyrinth, but strangely, the site was never fully excavated. Why stop digging when you're that close? Was it funding, bureaucracy, or something else? Later, in the 20th century, a team led by the famed Egyptologist Flinders Petrie also investigated the area. He found colossal fragments of columns and stone blocks, some weighing over 50 tons, arranged in such a way that didn't make sense for any ordinary temple. He concluded that a huge building once stood there, and that much of it had been deliberately dismantled. Dismantled, not ruined by nature, taken apart. But that's only the beginning, because to truly understand the labyrinth, we have to go deeper, inside its heart. Through the ancient texts, the forgotten maps, and the whispered rumors of hidden chambers. What we find next changes everything. The modern world had mostly forgotten about the labyrinth. It had faded into legend, another dusty myth in the scrolls of ancient historians. Until something shocking happened. In 2008, a team of researchers from Belgium and Egypt used a new technology at a site near Hawara, south of Cairo. This wasn't old-fashioned digging. This was ground-penetrating radar, a method that sends signals deep into the earth and reveals hidden structures without touching a single grain of sand. And what they found? It stunned everyone. Beneath the surface was something massive. A geometric structure the size of several football fields, with walls, corridors, rooms, and voids, all hidden underground. They published a detailed report of their findings, complete with radar scans. It showed in no uncertain terms that something enormous lies buried at Hawara, exactly where Herodotus described. But then, silence. The report disappeared from public access. The site was closed to further excavation. And the findings? Buried, just like the labyrinth itself. Why? Why shut down a discovery that could rewrite history? Many believe it was politics. or Egypt's strict control over archaeological sites. But others whisper of something deeper, a pattern. Because again and again, the closer we get to the truth about the labyrinth, the more the story gets buried, literally. So let's take a closer look at what the radar revealed. The scans showed a rectangular structure nearly 300 meters wide beneath the sand and groundwater. Within it, straight corridors, chamber-like formations, and internal divisions that clearly weren't natural. These weren't caves. They were man-made. And the shape? It matched almost exactly with the descriptions by Herodotus and Strabo. This wasn't coincidence. This was evidence. But it raised a terrifying question. If the labyrinth still exists beneath our feet, what's inside it? Some researchers believe it holds lost archives of ancient Egypt, texts too dangerous or sacred to be stored in temples or libraries. Others think it might contain records from before the pharaohs, from a civilization we no longer remember. And a few? They believe the labyrinth was a kind of ancient machine. Not in the modern sense, but something built to manipulate energy or guard a cosmic secret. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But then again, so was Göbekli Tepe before it was found. So were the Mayan pyramids hidden under jungles. So was Troy, before someone dared to dig where legend said it lay. History is full of things we called myths, until they weren't. And there's one more thing. A rumor that chills even the most skeptical researchers. It's said that deep in the labyrinth, in the lowest chamber, lies a sealed vault. Inside it is not gold, not jewels, but something else. A black box. No, not like a modern airplane recorder. This black box is said to be an ancient artifact, left behind by the builders of the labyrinth. An object of impossible design, made from a material unknown to modern science. Some say it holds the story of humanity before the flood. Others say it's a map, a prophecy, a warning. Whatever it is, no one has ever found it. Or if they have, they're not telling. And now we reach a crossroad. Because if the labyrinth does exist, if it's buried under Hawara, just waiting to be uncovered, why hasn't it been fully excavated? Why would one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in human history be left untouched? Some say it's funding, others blame bureaucracy. But maybe, just maybe, someone doesn't want us to find it. The real question is, what are they afraid of? Let's go back. Not just to ancient Egypt, but before it. Before the pyramids. Before the Sphinx. Before recorded history. Because here's the truth. Modern archaeology tells us that Egyptian civilization began around 3100 BC. But the deeper we dig, the more we find traces of something older. Much older. Stonework. Ruins. Knowledge. That shouldn't exist. And at the center of this mystery, the labyrinth. What if it wasn't built by the Egyptians at all? What if the pharaohs simply found it and claimed it? That's exactly what some researchers now believe. Because the architecture described by Herodotus, vast, precise, megalithic, doesn't match the style of the 12th dynasty pharaoh who supposedly built it. It matches something else. A lost civilization. One that may have existed thousands of years before Egypt rose from the sands. This is where things get truly strange. Because in almost every ancient culture, from Sumer to India, from Central America to the Andes, we find the same whispers of a time before the flood, of a people with immense knowledge, astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and then a cataclysm, a global disaster that wiped almost everything away. But some survivors remained. They became the first gods, the mysterious civilizers who arrived in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and elsewhere, taught writing,
agriculture, the stars. And perhaps they left behind something else. A record, a vault of knowledge, hidden in the earth. Guarded, buried, until humanity was ready. And maybe that vault is the labyrinth. Now look at what's inside this ancient complex. According to legends, thousands of rooms, hallways designed to confuse, secret passages, hidden chambers. Not a tomb, not a palace, something different, a repository. Not of treasure, but of information. Herodotus wrote that the labyrinth held the combined knowledge of all Egyptian temples. But if that knowledge wasn't Egyptian, then whose was it? Some scholars point to the mysterious pre-dynastic era, when Egypt's gods were said to rule as kings, a time of mythical rulers like Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, and Osiris, who brought civilization. But were they really just myths, or encoded memories of real beings? Some even suggest that the labyrinth was a machine of memory, a physical library of stone designed to last for ages, just like the Great Pyramid, not built for the dead, but for the future. Now consider this. The location of the labyrinth, at Hawara, sits near the Fayum oasis, an ancient region, rich in water, wildlife, and farming. But in the far past, it may have been the center of a thriving, forgotten culture long before dynastic Egypt rose. Even today, satellite images show unusual shapes beneath the desert, massive geometric patterns like buried cities. But no one is allowed to investigate them deeply. Why? Why this pattern again and again? Evidence surfaces and then vanishes. Discoveries are made and then sealed off, as if someone is guarding a secret, a very old one. So here's the question. If a lost civilization once existed, and if they left behind their knowledge inside the labyrinth, what happened to them? Where did they go? Why did they vanish? And what truth is still buried under the sand, just waiting for someone brave enough to dig? Let's step into a different kind of mystery now. Not one buried in sand, but in symbols, in secret texts, and in the shadows of powerful societies. Because while mainstream history forgot the labyrinth, some never did. The ancient Greeks weren't the only ones obsessed with this place. In fact, long after Herodotus, the Romans, the Gnostics, the Templars, and even the Freemasons spoke in whispers about a lost hall of records, a place that held the secrets of the universe. They didn't always call it the labyrinth, but the descriptions match. A hidden structure, underground, vast, guarded, and most importantly, containing knowledge forbidden to the uninitiated. Let's talk about that for a moment. In occult tradition, Egypt isn't just a place. It's a symbol for ancient wisdom, higher consciousness, and sacred science. And the labyrinth, it represents the path to truth, but not everyone can walk it. The winding halls, the confusion, the dead ends, they're metaphors for spiritual initiation. Only those who pass the trials, mentally, emotionally, even cosmically, can reach the center. And what's at the center? Light, truth, and power. Now fast forward to the Renaissance. As Europe awakens from the Dark Ages, a flood of ancient manuscripts starts to resurface. Alchemical texts, Hermetic writings, symbols that trace directly back to Egypt. The great thinkers of the time, Da Vinci, Newton, even Galileo, were deeply involved in esoteric studies. Some believe they were searching for a lost source of knowledge. Possibly.
A vault. Possibly. A real place. Then we arrive at the Enlightenment and beyond. The rise of secret societies, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the Theosophists, all of them use Egyptian imagery. The eye, the pyramid, the labyrinth, not just as decoration, but as keys, clues to something deeper. There are even Masonic rituals that symbolically recreate the journey through the labyrinth, complete with initiates being lost, tested, and finally illumined. Coincidence or memory? Now think about this. If a real ancient labyrinth once held pre-flood knowledge of cosmic cycles, energy, even human consciousness, wouldn't that explain why so many powerful groups wanted to guard it or hide it? Because here's a chilling thought. What if the labyrinth isn't just a relic? What if it's a key to unlock something? And there's more. Some conspiracy researchers claim that certain modern governments have already rediscovered the labyrinth, or parts of it. They just haven't told the public. Why? Because inside could be proof of an advanced ancient civilization, evidence that rewrites human history, technologies or knowledge we aren't ready for, or worse, truths that would unravel the world's belief systems. So now we face the ultimate mystery. If the labyrinth holds such knowledge, who decides what stays hidden and who gets access? Are we being kept in the dark or protected from something we're not yet ready to know? And maybe, just maybe, the answers aren't lost. They're just waiting. Let's bring everything full circle. You've heard the ancient accounts. You've seen how the labyrinth may have held forbidden knowledge, guarded by time, sand, and silence. But what if it's not just a story from the past? What if the labyrinth is still there, right now, beneath our feet? Let's talk science. In 2008, a team of researchers led by the Matterhorn expedition used ground-penetrating radar at Hawara, the very site Herodotus described. What did they find? A vast substructure, massive walls, multiple levels, rectangular chambers stretching for hundreds of meters. They didn't dig, they didn't excavate. But the radar data told a story. Something huge is down there, something that perfectly matches the ancient descriptions. And yet, the findings were barely publicized. The full report was almost buried. Why? That's where things get strange. Some say the Egyptian authorities blocked further exploration. That permits were denied. That officials warned the team, "You are not allowed to continue." Again, why? Was it political, religious, or something more deliberate? Because if the labyrinth is real, then everything changes. It proves the ancients weren't just primitive builders. They were architects of lost knowledge. And if there's a hall of records hidden beneath the desert, it might answer the questions we've been asking for centuries. Who were we before the flood? What were we capable of? And what did we lose? But there's one more twist. In 1935, a British explorer named Alfred Weigel claimed to have seen something strange near Hawara, a structure that shouldn't have existed. Locals led him to a partially exposed stone floor, one that descended into darkness. He was told, "This is the gate to the underworld." The next day, it was gone, covered, buried again, silenced. And in the decades since, more travelers, archaeologists, even military contractors have reported strange happenings in the area. Equipment mysteriously failing, GPS interference, local guides refusing to go near, almost like something or someone wants it to remain hidden. So what do we do with all this? Dismiss it as myth? Wait for governments to give us answers, or start asking the right questions?
Because the truth is this: the lost labyrinth of Egypt may never have been lost. It may have been intentionally buried, not just by sand, but by silence. A silence that stretches from the halls of ancient kings to the vaults of modern power. What lies beneath the sands of Egypt has always fascinated explorers, archaeologists, and dreamers alike. But when it comes to the mysterious labyrinth described by Herodotus, what we know is a fraction of what remains hidden. Here's something that will chill you. Beneath the surface of Hawara, where the labyrinth is said to lie, lies a vast subsurface anomaly. Not random shapes or scatterings. No, what they found was geometric, massive, symmetrical. In 2008, the Matterhorn expedition used ground-penetrating radar to scan the area. What they reported back wasn't vague. It was clear and intentional. They discovered what they described as a massive underground structure, buried under layers of sand and water-soaked sediment. A rectangular layout, chambers, corridors, and depths reaching nearly 20 meters. Now pause and consider that. A buried, structured complex, almost 20 meters beneath the earth, and nobody is excavating it. Why? The team's findings were submitted for peer review, but the results? Silenced. Reports that once circulated online vanished. The team couldn't continue. Permissions were frozen. And to this day, the Egyptian government hasn't greenlit a full excavation of the anomaly. This raised a terrifying question. What if someone already knew what was down there? Because here's the twist. What was discovered beneath the sands at Hawara isn't just massive. It's older than anyone expected. Older than the pyramids, some argue. This buried structure could be from a pre-dynastic time, before written Egyptian history even began. And that opens the door to a possibility few dare to say out loud. What if the labyrinth was not built by the pharaohs we know, but by an even older, forgotten civilization? The idea might sound wild, but the evidence is growing. Many ancient Egyptian texts speak of a time before the first time, Zep-Tepi, the beginning of all things. Yeah. A mythological golden age ruled by gods and demigods. To most, it's just mythology. But to others, Zep-Tepi is a cryptic memory of a prehistoric advanced culture, one whose fingerprints lie deep beneath Hawara. Think of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site once thought impossible, older than Stonehenge by thousands of years, yet with carvings, alignments, and symbolic depth that suggest a highly advanced society. Now bring that thought back to Egypt. Could the labyrinth be Egypt's Göbekli Tepe, a remnant not just of history, but of prehistory? The thought is staggering, but we're not done. Because what's more disturbing than what's been found is what's being kept from us. By now, one thing should be clear. There's something beneath Hawara. A colossal structure, chambers, corridors, depths untouched for thousands of years. The Matterhorn expedition found it. Their scans confirmed it. And yet, silence. No news reports, no academic debates, no excavation permits. Why? Let's connect the dots. After the Matterhorn team submitted their findings, their report was pulled from the web, their access revoked. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, at the time led by Zahi Hawass, refused further investigation, and not a single shovel touched the ground where the radar showed the underground complex. Does that sound like science or suppression? Many believe this isn't just bureaucracy or red tape. It's control. A deliberate choice to keep this discovery from the world. But again, why? Here's one possibility. If the labyrinth was built by a civilization older than the pharaohs, older even than dynastic Egypt, it would rewrite everything. History books, chronologies, academic power structures, entire careers. And for institutions built on Egypt's known timeline, that's dangerous. Now think bigger. What if the structure beneath Hawara holds records, texts, artifacts not just from an older civilization, but from a time before the flood, before what the ancients called Zep-Tepi? That kind of revelation could shake the foundations of religion, history, and science. And not everyone wants that kind of chaos. There's another layer. Whispers from insiders and fringe researchers claim that certain powerful organizations, whether governmental or private, have already explored parts of the labyrinth quietly, secretly. They don't want discovery. They want possession. Because knowledge is power, and ancient knowledge, that's power multiplied. Imagine if beneath the sand lies a hall of records, scrolls, tablets, inscriptions preserved for millennia, PS written in languages we've never seen, containing truths we were never meant to know. Herodotus said he saw hieroglyphs in the labyrinth that surpassed all description. What if those writings are still down there, waiting? But the deeper question is chilling. Is the labyrinth being hidden to protect us from what's inside, or to protect those in power from losing control? Either way, the silence isn't just suspicious, it's strategic, and it might not last forever, because cracks are starting to show. More researchers, more scans, more public attention, and if the sands shift just a little more, what's buried might finally come to light. But what will we find? And are we ready for it? So, what have we uncovered? A labyrinth that once astonished Herodotus, a structure mapped by modern technology, yet denied by the gatekeepers. A mystery buried beneath the sands of Hawara, protected, ignored, or hidden, depending on who you believe. But here's the truth. Something is down there. And it's vast. Stone chambers, long corridors, columns that still stand beneath the desert floor. A layout larger than many known ancient cities. And yet, no one is digging. But why does this story matter? Because it's not just about lost stones or dusty halls. It's about legacy, about the human story we thought we knew, and the parts that were erased. If the labyrinth exists as described, it may predate dynastic Egypt. It may contain records from a civilization forgotten by time. It may even answer the biggest question of all. Where did it all begin? And that changes everything. Because it means history isn't linear. It's layered. It's cyclical. And it's far older than we've been told. But here's the twist. This isn't just a story of the past. It's a challenge to the present. A reminder that even in the age of satellites, AI, and global networks, the greatest secrets might still lie underground, waiting. And maybe, just maybe, the truth isn't lost. It's buried. For now. But one day, someone will dig, and when they do, the world will never be the same again. Until then, the lost labyrinth of Egypt remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of our ancient world, and the question still echoes, what lies beneath? So if this story stirred something in you, if it made you question the version of history we've been handed, then maybe that's the point. The lost labyrinth isn't just buried under Egypt. It's buried in our minds, in the layers of forgotten truths we're only beginning to uncover. History isn't a closed book. It's a puzzle scattered across ruins, myths, and forbidden chambers. And every time we ask questions like, why would they hide this? Or, what else don't we know? We come a little closer to seeing the bigger picture. If this journey made you look at ancient Egypt, and maybe even the modern world, a little differently, then share it. Start a conversation. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come from the experts. It comes from those who dare to look beneath the surface.